Okay, good morning. We're in the Maamar of Titzave that was released in 1992 for Purim Cotton. Originally said 1981, Parshas Titzave, and we're on chapter Dalid 4.
Released in 1992.
Yeah, in other words, the Rebbe distributed, like I told you yesterday, the history, the Rebbe distributed the Maamar 1992. That was the last time that he gave out a Maamar to people, to Chasidim and others who came by, was this Maamar, and then he had a stroke.
Yeah, it was said in 1981, but it was published and distributed.
Edited by the Rebbe.
Yeah.
It was said in 1981.
That's what I wrote. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was as I said yesterday, it was said and released in 81 as a non-edited discourse, non-edited by the Rebbe. Chasidim, the Chasidim who heard this at the Farbrengen, they wrote down what they heard, but it was not edited. The version that we're learning, I assume, what Shmuel gave you, the copies, is the edited version. And I told you yesterday that I studied the unedited version back in 1981 when I was a student, and it was only 2 pages, and this is like, 5-6 pages, because the Rebbe and his staff edited it in a way that has so much more elaboration and footnotes and details. Okay, and now we're in chapter 4. Just a brief recap. We're learning about the Pasuk, V'ata Titzave, in this week's Parsha. It says, Hashem says to Moshe, you shall instruct the children of Israel, Ata Titzave, tell them, you command them to bring to you Moshe, Shemen Zayas, Zoch, olive oil, Kosis Lamoy, that's crushed well, that's grounded well. The olive should be grounded well. Lamoy, to add light to the luminary. The luminary means the source of light, where light comes from. Lahalish ner tamid, for that to be a constant light. That's the verse. And he asked 4 questions, which I'm not going to repeat now, on that verse. And he started to explain what Moshe Rabbeinu does. And why this verse is why Hashem addresses Moshe rather than Aaron, because Aaron is the one who lit the menorah, being the Kohen Gadol, who had the obligation to light the menorah in the base up in the temple. Nevertheless, the pasuk doesn't address Aaron; it addresses Moshe, and that was one of his questions. So from this we see that somehow this specific idea of lighting the menorah in a manner which is called very crushed and grounded oil is specifically dedicated to Moshe. Aaron couldn't do that. And that's why it's dedicated to Moshe. To understand that, we're right now in the middle of understanding it. Yes?
I was just wondering, it's when you see it in the Chumash, so it says Tipat Rishona, right? Then only the very first... It's only in the Rashi, the Tipat Rishona?
Yeah.
It's in Rashi. Rashi.
Okay. Well, I was just wondering what if like the Rebbe goes into that at all, like what that means.
No, not in this Maamar. No.
Okay. There is a lot
on that whole subject.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion on that Rashi and the commentators and then later Chasidus, but in this Maamar it's not discussed. Let's now learn inside to see the Rebbe's words. Peirik Dalet, chapter 4. V'hinei habir b'posik v'ata Titzave baba haMaamar behemshich lahamavur b'tchilas haMaamar. I want to say, Moshe, yesterday, you were a little confused, the back and forth. You have to pay attention here because he jumps back and forth between the verse, his father-in-law's Maamar, and his own commentary. So you got to keep your finger on the place, Anyway, so he says, to explain the verse, V'ata Titzave, which is, and you shall command, the beginning of the Parsha and the beginning of this Maamar, over there, Baba HaMaamar, he means it's brought in my father-in-law's discourse, which remember he said in 1927, which this discourse is based on. So over there, if you look into my father-in-law's discourse, you'll see that the citation of Va'ata Titzave comes behemshech lahamavur betchilas haMaamar. Right? What does he say in the beginning of the Maamar of my father-in-law? The Pirush v'kibul haYehudim asher echelu lasos. That the meaning, that what's written in the Megillah, that the Jewish people accepted v'kibel es asher echelu lasos, that which they began doing way back at the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai, who shekiblu ma shehechelu b'azman the Matan Torah. It's what they accepted, what they re-accepted what they began doing at the time of Matan Torah. The Matan Torah, when the Torah was given on Har Sinai, on Mount Sinai, Hoysa Haschola, it was only a beginning. Heichelu lasos. Now, the word heichelu has two meanings. One meaning, the literal meaning of the word heichelu, Moshe, what does heichelu mean?
To initiate? Right.
Correct. To initiate. But here, he brings his father-in-law's interpretation, the previous Rebbe, who uses by the way, which it's based on in footnote 19, he brings it from the Alter Rebbe from Torah Or. And what's the interpretation of Heichelu there? Not to initiate, but beginning. That began. That's a different interpretation. Okay? Okay, fine. So he says that what did the Jewish people do during the time of Haman that merited to the victory over Haman? Not just they did Torah mitzvahs. They picked up on what they left off a long time back when the Torah was given, because then they just began the process and it wasn't finished. When did they culminate the experience of Matan Torah? Purim time. That's a fantastic insight. And during the time of Achashverosh, which is the decree of Haman, Hoysa HaKabbalah, that's when they had what's called Vikibel, the Kabbalah, HaYehudim. Another fantastic insight, Hillel. In other words, when you learn Bapashtus, when Hashem gave us the Torah, Ruvain, on the Mount Sinai, right? We received the Torah, accepted the Torah, finished, gone, goodbye, great. Chazal, according to the way the previous Rebbe is interpreting it, the Alter Rebbe, no, it's not gone, goodbye. They didn't actually conclude, or better said, they didn't really accept it. You know when they really accepted it? Vikibel? Purim time. So this too is a fascinating insight. Right? Normally, in other words, when you read this verse in the Megillah, in a week and a half, we'll be listening to this verse. Vikibel ha-Yehudim. Which means basically Jewish people initiated the implementing Torah mitzvahs during that time. There was a decree, right? Haman didn't want them to keep Shabbos and then do this and that, different things, whatever, and they did it. That's the way you read the Megillah if you're not learning Chasidus. Comes along Chasidus and says what it really means is that the Kabbalah, the real acceptance that I really want to do this, and I really believe in this, and this is what I'm all about, which we call the Kabbalah, didn't happen until Purim. And that's fascinating thought, Moshe, because that means even when the Torah was given, it was from our perspective, it was incomplete. We did not accept the Torah wholeheartedly. And it had to wait all that time, and only during the time of Mordechai and Haman and Achashverosh and Purim is when we were makabel the Torah. That's what it says here. Okay?
It's a Chazal. It's a Gemara.
It's a Gemara in Shabbos, yes, but Chasidus elaborates on it, yes. Valderech Maamar Azal, here, he brings the Chazal. Look at note 20 that Shmuel just cited. It's from Shabbos. By the way, Shmuel, you see, I'm not going to go into it now, but he brings it in a brackets, and we really have to know if it's exactly what you're saying. It is the Chazal. It shouldn't be in a brackets. So if it's in a bracket, it's not exactly the same Chazal. It's similar to the Chazal. Similarly to the interpretation of the sages in the Gemara and Shabbos, al haposik, on the verse Kimu v'kiblu haYehudim, right? Kimu v'kiblu haYehudim. They accepted, they fulfilled, and they accepted. The Jews did so. Kimu masher kiblu kvar. They accepted what they initially had received. The fact that they prefaced, we will do before we will understand, during the time the Torah was given, it was only the Kabbalah. Over Me'achashveirosh, Kimu Masher Kiblu. They sustained, they fulfilled what they accepted. Can someone tell me why this is Va'al Derech Maamar Azal? You see, when you learn in a Maamar, Hillel, Va'al Derech, you have to stop and ask yourself, what is the reason it says Va'al Derech? Either this Chazal is the identical idea to what we're studying, and if it's not, why not? Anyone?
Oh, at the beginning of the brackets is okay. I was wondering.
Maybe we should look at the notes here, 22 and 23.
No, because, well, wait. Note 22 is not relevant to this Inyan. I don't want to confuse more. I want to keep it simple. Before we go to the note, Shmuel, I'm asking on the text. Why does it say Valderech, Shmuel?
In the same way that Chazal say it, so we put it.
No. It wouldn't say Valderech. No. Valderech implies there's a similarity, but it's not exactly identical. And you know why? It's simple. It's simple. The interpretation of the Alter Rebbe is on V'kibel HaYehudim. It's referring to the Kabbalah. The Chazal are learning the same idea, not about the Kabbalah, but about the Kimu. Look, what it said, the Chazal say, the Zeshik Dimu Nasal Lisha, that was only a beginning, the Kabbalah. In other words, according to what we learned from Torah, there was no Kabbalah at Har Sinai. There was no Kabbalah. There was no real Kabbalah. Right? And the Kabbalah came during Purim. What the Chazal are saying is there was a kind of a Kabbalah, but it wasn't complete. And I indicate that it wasn't complete because it says Kimu. Right? Look at the end of the brackets. Kimu Masher Kiblu. So that's why it says Va'al Derech. That's why I'm explaining. It says it's similar to, because the Chazal is about the Kimu, and the Torah with the explanation that the Rebbe brings here is about the Kabbalah. Okay, I hope you got it. Let's go on. And he says further in the Maamar, Hudavar Pella. Seemingly, this is strange. When the Torah was given, the Jews were in their best behavior and their best stature. And they experienced the greatest level of godliness possible. Although it's true that pre-Matan Torah, pre-giving of the Torah, there were great revelations. For example, the revelation of godliness when he took us out of Egypt, and specifically when we crossed the Red Sea. Nevertheless, those revelations, the Rebbe doesn't explain. He just says, my friends, I let you know that the revelation that we experienced when we were given the Torah, were much greater, Boaz, than the revelation of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the revelation of godliness during Kriyas Yamsuf. Moshe then comes along the days of Achashverosh. We were very, very low. The Noisif Lahela Vaheshta Shebechol Golus. How is that? Number one, the fact is we were in Golus. So just being in Golus is a bummer. We're down. The whole Golus who bedugmas Golus Mitzrayim. Every exile, whether it's the exile of Purim or the exile of Shanghai or the exile of Poland during the Holocaust, whatever the exile is, when you're in exile, it ain't good. It's not. It's Golus. Even Golus Barapark, right? Golus Mitzrayim Ksiv. And just like during the Golus of Mitzrayim, it says, the Jews didn't listen to Moshe. They were short breath and hard work, and they couldn't catch their breath, and they were running around, they were tired, and they couldn't think. So it's in every Golus. There's all kinds of tests, trials, and tribulations, Torah mitzvahs. We're being pulled in all directions. The winds are blowing. Right? People who were connected all of a sudden are dropping out. What's going on? What are you unhappy about? You have all kinds of challenges happening. In addition to that, during the time of Haman, guess what? The Golus was even greater. The Golus was even greater then. And nevertheless, the time of Matan Torah, when Jews were at the ultimate level of godliness, we say it was only it was only a beginning. And during the time of Haman, which is such a thick Golus, was when we were in the ultimate of descent. Specifically then, we accepted what we began at Matan Torah. It seems like an oxymoron. It's enigmatic. How can it be the dafka when you're shattered and schmettered and challenged with all kinds of tests, trials, and tribulations? Then specifically you receive the Torah. This is the question of my father-in-law in his Maamar. So in Movayir Bezeh, it's explained that during the decree, the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs was with self-sacrifice. That issue of fighting to stay alive, you're in the ring, the guy is giving you 2 punches, knocking your head down. One more time, you're finished. You're fighting for your life. All your adrenaline is drawn out. And somehow you pull back and you give a left hook into the head, the guy's down, and you win the battle. The last moment, Mesiras Nefesh. Because you know, if not now, it's over. So you draw upon the recesses, the depths of your heart, which is infinite. That's what we call Mesiras Nefesh. In addition to the fact that our ancestors during the time of Purim had self-sacrifice, not to deny, God forbid, in the existence of God, as explained in the Alter Rebbe's Torah or in the Maamar of Purim, shebehem hoye mamlim datam shebeim hoye mamlim datam. You know what it says? If the Jewish people would have rebelled against their religion, Achashverosh would have not done anything to them. Because the decree of Haman's decree was what? Just for Jews. If you denounce your Jewishness, you go scot-free. Nevertheless, Le'osa al daitam. It didn't enter their mind. Look at those words, Moshe. Le'osa al daitam. It didn't enter the mind and consciousness of any and every Jew, machshevas chutz chas v'sholom, an outside thought, God forbid, of renouncing Jewishness. No one was for a moment thinking, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to just say I'm not a Jew, and God forbid, and that's it, and I'll be left alone. No way, Jose. So they had this Mesiras Nefesh, mitzvahs. In other words, like this. Boaz, there is Mesiras Nefesh for faith. I'm having self-sacrifice not to denounce my Jewishness. But I won't fulfill. I won't study, Ruvain. You're telling me I'm going to study, I'm going to get shot? I'm not studying Torah. I'm a Jew, and I believe in you, God, and I believe in Torah, but I can't do now because I might get shot. Says Chazal, the rabbis teach us that they had self-sacrifice even for doing the Torah and learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. Va'ad shehikilu kilus barabim. Guess what Mordechai did? He went around in the heart of the lion. He gathered Jews to teach them Torah b'mesiras nefesh. This is exactly what I learned being in Moscow about 2 months ago was done during the height of communism, KGB, and everything else. The Lubavitcher Hasidim and others continued learning in the underground, knowing full and gathering Jewish children as much as possible. And what we have today is a result of that hard work and Mesiras Nefesh. Who gave the Jewish people, the Yidden of the time, during Purim, this ability to have such self-sacrifice? It was one person called Mordechai the Jew, Mordechai Yehudi, who was, like we learned earlier from the Chazal, Moshe Shebedorei. He was the Moses of his generation. And the Moses of each generation, the Moshe Rabbeinu Shebechol Dor V'Dor, is an extension of the first Moshe Rabbeinu, and it's that individual who gives the koyach to every Jew, if they just want to be able to have self-sacrifice and do what Hashem wants you to do. Now we go back to the verse, and the Jews received what was initiated to do the Matan Torah, repeating his idea that during the time when the Torah was given, it was only a beginning. And during the time of the decree of Haman, it was the Kabbalah. So we have the Haskalah and the Kabbalah, the fulfillment, the receiving, the acceptance. Because the Jews, during the time of Purim, had actual self-sacrifice for the implementation of Torah mitzvahs, Nisalu be'inyan zeh, they had an aliyah. L'madrega nailas yoseh, they were elevated to a higher level, mikamay shahoyah bizman matan Torah, more than the way we were when the Torah was given. Unbelievable. V'lochein oz dafka hoysha Kabbalah. That's why at that time there was the Kabbalah. You understand? Now, why do we credit Boaz, the Kabbalah, to Purim? It's because we lived Mesiras Nefesh. During the time of Matan Torah, we didn't live Mesiras Nefesh. We saw God, we heard God, we got the Torah. Wow, that's great. Like you're getting a gift. What did you do? Your parents educate you. They pay for your tuition. They put you on your feet. So what did you do? Big deal. You did nothing. The one thing you did is you didn't rebel. You did rebel, but you still, you know what I'm saying? But you didn't initiate. What?
You made it to Chasidus today.
Yeah. But when you have to do it yourself, in face of attack and accusation and a busy schedule, and you pull yourself away. By the way, to be able to come to learn Chasidus in the middle of your workday, like Moshe and some others, that's a very, I'm not saying it to make him feel great. I'm saying this because the Rebbe says in different Maamar, in the previous Rebbe. That's why Eliyahu,
because I need it.
Yeah, Eliyahu was not answered. It says that the prayers of Eliyahu were not answered only in the merit of Mincha. Why Mincha? Why not Shachris and Ma'ariv? Because Shachris are your early years when you're a young guy. Ma'ariv is when you're an AK. You're an old kvetcher, right? When you're young, you gotta go to school. And when you're old, you have nothing to do, so you come to shul. But in the middle, mincha years are your middle years, your best years, your working years. You're active, And in the middle of those years, to pull yourself away and to learn Torah. So too in the day. Shachris is before work. Ma'ariv is after work. Mincha is right in the middle of the day. Chazal say, Eliyahu's prayers were only answered because of the mincha prayer, because that's where it really counts. The same idea is over here. It's the Kabbalah of receiving the Torah and living it out with self-sacrifice during hard times that makes it genuine. So this is a fantastic insight, not only to what took place Purim. We celebrate Purim, and there's parties, and there's Rosh, and dress up, and Mishleach Manas, and gifts, and Matanas Levyonim. It's all nice, but there's an underlying idea that makes it such a special 24 hours. This is the idea. Self-sacrifice. So amongst all of their rah-rah-rah, the hoo-ha-ha, and everything else, let's not forget what we're talking about. We're talking about a day when our ancestors stepped up to the plate. When you step up to the plate, and they're shooting darts at you, and they're laughing at you, and you come from a background, they say, what do you need this religion for? What do you need this Chasidus for? You can be like all others, and in the face of the opposition and the ridicule, and you stand up, and you don't give up, and you have your long beard, or your long payas, whatever, or your yarmulke, whatever. And like the Satmar Rebbe came to Williamsburg in 47, what did he do? What's his genius that he did? He said, listen, we were dressed a certain way in Hungary. We're going to bring it to the streets of Williamsburg. They said, Rebbe, you're crazy. When people wear beards, I had a Rebbe Barnetsky Olav Sholem, who came back with a beard. He went to learn in Poland in 1939. He was there for 2.5 weeks. The war broke out. He came back, but he let his beard grow. So he's walking in Brooklyn, and cars are honking. They're honking like he's a goat. They saw a goat walking in the street. No one had beards. A frum person, no one had. Select rabbis had beards. The average person who was Orthodox, belonged to a shul, davened 3 times a day, didn't have a beard. And here this young guy was 20 years old, 22, started to grow his beard. So he told us, he was our Rebbe, he told us, I remember this from 5th grade when I was a young little boy in elementary school. He told us that they would honk the horns. There's a goat walking over here. And he kept his beard. And if you think his parents were happy about the beard, they were not. And he didn't take off his beard. I'm just saying that the self-sacrifice, and guess what? And sometimes your own spouse doesn't want you to have the beard. And sometimes your own spouse wants you to be a certain way. There's no over here, well. We're talking about, I know someone who grew his beard and put on a big yarmulke. He's in Midtown Manhattan. He has a prominent job, meets all kinds of people. His wife isn't religious, wasn't, maybe now she is. An American woman, a real woman's liber, a very successful woman, a woman who when I brought them to Yerushalayim, and we were waiting for the van to go to Hebron on Rechav Yecheskel over there. There's a public van. And I'm standing there, and I wanted to get into my coat. It was during the winter, and just bury my head, because she looked like a man, bald. It was a certain feminine look that the women's liberal at the time. So he's standing with his beard, I'm standing with my beard, and there's a woman next to him, his wife, who looks like a man, and she's a female. And he didn't take off his beard. And he goes to the biggest business meetings. And I asked him once, we used to learn together, I asked him, how do you do it? And also, isn't it bringing discord in your marriage? And I was going to tell him, if it does, maybe you should roll up your beard, trim your beard, take it slow. He jumped right into it. And he told me, not only does my wife respect me, but all my employees and all the people I meet with, they say, wow. Why wow? Not because he's genuine and sincere as a person, as a mensch. So if they see this wonderful mensch, they know that him putting on a beard means something very important for him, and he's not doing it for fashion, and he's not doing it to show off. He's doing it to be genuine. And the same is true in every aspect of Torah mitzvahs. When we come to a point, again, I just chose the beard not to rub it into anyone, chas v'sholom, God forbid. I mean to say, the whole idea of being a frum Jew, of being a committed Jew, living your Yiddishkeit, being strong, requires self-sacrifice and a commitment that's very deep within you, and then no one in the world can shake that commitment. They tell over the story where a Ger Chassid, came to the Ger Rebbe one day, and he was wearing a big spudik, those big fur hats they call a spudik, with a long black thing, kapota, and a full beard. And the Rebbe hadn't seen him in a few years. And the Rebbe said, Shalom Aleichem, Reb Yankel, a freilichem Purim, a happy Purim. He says, Rebbe, today's not Purim. He says, oh, really? You're dressed like it's Purim. Why? Because for what the Ger Rebbe felt or he knew, he wasn't genuine. He was doing it because when in Rome, do like the Romans. Everyone's wearing a spudik. I got to put on a spudik. Now, I'm not going to poo-poo that entirely, because I had a group of people who became Bali Tshuva, some more, some less, and they were wearing gartlach. They were wearing a gartel on their jacket, Shabbos. And some of them came to shul by car at that time. Then they stopped. I was coming from Crown Heights. I was coming from Brooklyn. I was a Lubavitcher, a young 23-year-old Lubavitcher. I was, very passionate and all that. Not as polished at that time. And it bothered me. You're wearing a gartel and you're driving to shul? It don't add up. And what I learned by observing and growing with them is that this was their fraternity club. This was the equivalent to what they call in Reform and conservative synagogues, temples, they call this the brotherhood. This was their brotherhood. This is the way they identified. So since the one who became really frum with everything put on a gartel, and they wanted to feel good and be part of that, they also put on the gartel. So, sometimes the chitzonius, the superficiality and external, helps a person become more committed. There is such a thing. I'm not going to say there isn't. But a person has to assess themselves. You have to really assess yourself. The bottom line is what we have right now, so far, in the Maamar is the Mesiras Nefesh. That our ancestors, during the time of Purim, were kimu, mashe kiblu kvar, or as we learned in the other Chazal, chelu lasos, and the Kabbalah was dafka the Mesiras Nefesh. You never know if it's really, Shlomo Karlbach used to also say, you never know. What do you mean you never know? You never know. Am I genuine? Am I really doing it for Hashem or not? But when your back is to the wall, and then you do it, and you do it because that's who you are, so the pressure from the situation brings out in you the best. And that's the answer to the question, Boaz. Why was the Kabbalah? What was our question, Shmuel? How can it be that the Kabbalah was at a time when there wasn't such Gilui Elikus, godly revelation, as there was by Matan Torah? So what's the answer to the question? That was the question. Right. Right. And that's he's going to say, correct, that's he's going to say soon. Let's continue. And this is feeding right into what Shmuel just said. We could seemingly say that the meaning in the verse, kosis lamor, that the olive oil should be grounded well, shayidei kosis, through the activity and process called kosis. Look at these words, nishbar v'nitke, broken and shattered. Magiyim lahamor, when you're in that position and coming from there, you know what? You touch not just the light, you touch the source of light. Who be it al zeh, that is an explanation. Shebesmanak zeda dafka bolam silas nefesh b'ifenai le'yeser. That's an explanation. That's exactly what Shmuel just said. What Shmuel just said is what he's saying here. Seemingly, he says seemingly Shmuel. Why? Ki b'silas nefesh he mitzad etzem an neshama shelamayla me'gili. Because self-sacrifice, Moshe Myers, comes from the essence of your neshama that transcends revelation and manifestation. Ma'or shememenu nimtzar. We call this in Hasidic terminology the illuminary, the Ma'or Hillel versus Ha'or, the light, the energy. Okay? Because we Jews, during the time of Purim, were in a situation of smashed, crushed, and beaten. This Gale Etzem Aneshama, our essence was revealed. Ma'or. Says the Rebbe, our Rebbe now says, Avo, Mehemshech, V'Seider in Yonim B'Maimed. The Rebbe says, but if you look into the order of the way this idea is brought in my father-in-law's discourse, Shapirus Bekosis Lamor, Bo La'achri, Unyan Deraya Mehemna, that the idea of Kosis Lamor is explained in my father-in-law's discourse after he explains the idea of a faithful shepherd, Mashba, it implies the Inyan Kosis Lamor, Shayach Gam Lezeh, Shemoshe Zonim Faran Samuna, Shubeptimias. That the idea of Kosis Lamor isn't only a point that's relevant to our Mesiras Nefesh, but also to the fact, hello guys, pay attention, also to because this is very confusing. Oh, it's also connected to the idea that Moshe sustains and feeds faith in an inner way. Remember, we learned earlier, and Moshe, you asked me, there's 2 points. One is the point of Mesiras Nefesh, and one is the point that Moshe Rabbeinu of each generation feeds faith to be internalized. He makes our faith be internalized. So the Rebbe says, Shmuel, the Rebbe is saying that the juxtaposition in my father-in-law's Maamar implies that the reason that the idea of Kosis isn't only because of the Mesiras Nefesh, it's also associated because Moshe Rabbeinu because it was brought to Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, like this. Let me just. I want to make sure it's clear. You could say like this. God says, tells Moshe, tell the Jewish people to bring olive oil that's crushed to you, which will be good for the source of light, the Mar. So the question is, what's special about this light? So one explanation is because this has gone through, this olive oil has been this olive has been smashed and crushed, and the best people, like you said, comes out, right? The best comes out from the process. So that's why it's very precious, and that's why Hashem says, light the menorah with this type of self-sacrifice. That's one interpretation. Another interpretation is that because this olive oil was instructed to be brought to Moshe, and Moshe is the one that instills in you the highest level of self-sacrifice, that is why the oil is precious. It has, in other words, in a way, it has little to do with our activity, our self-sacrifice. It has to do with the fact that we're bringing it to Moshe Rabbeinu.
Okay.
I mean, that's okay. We'll stop here, and tomorrow we'll continue, Mr. Shem. Sei gesund, everyone. Hatzlacha, gute Tag.
Okay.